about how to make decisions in a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. How does one know how to make the right decision? In such a world, there is no clear line of sight, no predictability, nor guarantees. What you choose as the anchors of your life will determine the decisions you make. This argument is based on Stephen Covey's views on leadership and living as described in his famous book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If your life anchors are external to you, if you are anchored in money or work or family, friends, possessions, you're always going to make decisions that empower circumstances to guide and control you. And in the end, the outcomes will not bring stability and confidence because they are outcomes based on the whims of others or on a knee-jerk reaction to the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity around us. Such decisions are unstable and unsustainable. Some examples. One could argue that the decisions that in the end brought down great companies or even countries are rooted in anchors like money and possessions. If one's life anchor is your friends, you'll be prone to make your decisions based on what pleases them or makes you look good in their eyes. But there's no sustainable happiness or achievement or self-worth in that because you have given away your control and life and you live through others. If you are work or profit driven, your decisions will exclude doing the right thing when that right thing does not place profit and work above all else. For instance, considering the environment or plowing some returns into the community from where you draw your people. So, what anchor then will bring enduring peace of mind, stability in a chaotic world, security, confidence in what you decide and do? Only something that is universally true, that is enduring, unchanging, and acts as your North Star. And that something is principles. Covey speaks about principle-centered leadership, living, and decision-making. There are certain universal, unchanging laws of humanity, and all human beings are inherently aware of them and know that they're the truth. Think about concepts like fairness, human dignity, compassion, integrity, service, gratitude, hard work, sustainability. They are essentially unarguable because they're self-evident. One way to quickly grasp the self-evident nature of principles is to simply consider the absurdity of attempting to live an effective life based on the opposites. I doubt that anyone would seriously consider unfairness, deceit, baseness, uselessness, mediocrity, or degeneration to be a solid foundation for lasting happiness and success. Living by principles, letting them guide your decision making, produces a consistently honorable character and behavior. For example, 3 business leaders faced the same problem. COVID-19 placed so much financial pressure on their companies that they had to make drastic cost savings or go under. I'm sure a story many of you have heard and lived in these days. So the first business owner placed more value on money and profit than on anything else in his life. For the second, the most valuable thing is family. And for the third, living a life of purpose and principles is their anchor. How is it then that they all arrived at the same decision to lay off staff to save their businesses? The decision may have been the same, but the reason, the anchor behind each leader's decision will determine how that decision is executed and what the consequences will be. The money-centered businessman's decision is based on maximizing profit, and no other restructure decision would save more cost than laying off staff. So that's what he does. Consequences one can imagine would be the company returns to profitability, but it might be tough to sustain if the remaining staff perceive greed or unfairness or lack of compassion in the owner's decision-making, and thus trust is destroyed. The family-centered businessman takes the decision to lay off staff rather than choose another restructuring option that would mean that he must spend more hours at work and fewer with his family. The consequence is that he indeed has more time to spend with his family than what he would have if he made another restructure decision. But he spends less time at the coalface during a difficult time, which might result in lower productivity, lower staff morale, missed opportunities to find and grow new revenue streams, on top of having fewer people to carry the business forward. And again, trust is destroyed. The principle-centered leader makes his restructure decisions driven by his commitment to human dignity and fairness. He still ends up laying off staff, but is able to lay off fewer than the other two because he's prepared to compromise and blend the restructuring with other actions like cost cuts elsewhere. He has to lay off some staff in order to save the jobs of many more and thereby retain their livelihoods and dignity. But he makes sure that those who have to go are treated fairly and with respect. Likely consequences would be less damage to staff morale of those that stay behind, more loyalty, no ex-employees with grudges. Trust is built. So the consequences of your decisions are determined by the motives behind those decisions. When I was at university, I heard a story from a geology student about how it happened that the Ponte Tower was built in downtown Joburg in 1975. The story actually started with the building of the Carlton Centre that was completed a year earlier in 1974. So the aspiration was to build the tallest building in Africa, which it indeed was for a period of 39 years. We all know that skyscrapers are anchored on bedrock beneath the surface of the earth. Sometimes a piece of bedrock may become detached, maybe a very large piece, but nonetheless detached, which was the case in our story, which goes that the Carlton Centre was built on the one side of such a detached piece of bedrock, meaning that it might start to sink over time because of its huge weight, like the Tower of Pisa. The geologists realized this too late. The building was already complete. And so it came about that the Ponte Towers had to be built on the other side of the floating bedrock to balance the Carlton and prevent it from sinking. This story is an urban legend. I've not been able to find any literature to confirm it, unless I was looking in the wrong places. However, whether fact or fiction, it serves to illustrate my point, that the consequences of your decisions are determined by the motives behind those decisions. You might imagine that there was so much ego, vanity, and profit-chasing behind the decision to build the tallest building in Africa that insufficient attention was given to the geological study before the rush of getting the work done. Had the decision to build the Carlton Tower been principle-based, on integrity, service to the people of Johannesburg, sustainability, a different execution approach would have been followed. So in using this example, both the principle-centered and the ego-centered decision makers came to the same decision, to build the Carlton Centre. But the consequences, in the case of the principle-centered decisions, will always be stability and honour and sustainability. Now another important thing for the principle-centered decision maker, context matters. Say it's late on a Friday afternoon and the boss contacts you to ask you to cancel your weekend plans to work on a request for a proposal that just came in from a potential client. And the deadline is Monday morning. In a context where you know that the boss's wife is very ill and that he needs you because he cannot focus on the job this weekend, as a principle-centered decision maker, you might agree your decision would be guided by principles like fairness and compassion and loyalty. In a context where the boss is a narcissistic, ego-driven individual who does little and takes the credit for others' output all the time, the principle-centered person would probably say no, based on those same values of fairness and so forth. In contrast, the work-centered or the money-centered person would say yes regardless of context, because their decision-making is ends-based, not principle-based. Here's a very powerful illustration of the truth that context matters, written by a Navy officer. So, 2 battleships assigned to the training squadron had been at sea on maneuvers in heavy weather for several days. I was serving on the lead battleship and was on watch on the bridge as night fell. The visibility was poor with patchy fog, so the captain remained on the bridge, keeping an eye on all activities. Shortly after dark, the lookout on the wing of the bridge reported light bearing on the starboard bow. Is it steady or moving astern? The captain called out. The lookout replied, steady, captain, which meant we were on a dangerous collision course with that ship. The captain then called to the signal man, signal that ship, we are on a collision course. Advise you change course 20 degrees. Back came a signal, advisable that you change to 20 degrees. The captain said, send, I'm captain, change course 20 degrees. I'm a seaman, second class, came the reply. You had better change course 20 degrees. By that time the captain was furious. He spat out, send, I'm a battleship, change course 20 degrees. Back came the flashing light. I'm a lighthouse. We changed course. So in conclusion, coming back to the question we asked at the start, how does one make decisions in a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world? Here are 3 takeaways from today. Allow yourself to be led by enduring, universal, human-centered principles, and you'll have confidence that you will decide the right thing. Double check yourself by considering the consequences of your decisions. Are they rooted in ends-based motives or in principles? And stand back and look at the big picture, because context matters. If you are willing to abandon your principles for convenience or social acceptability, they are not your principles, they your costume.